Welcome back to another exciting episode of the Level Up and Live podcast. I'm your host, Sean Myers, joined by my co-host, Ewan Heinemeier. And today, we're embarking on a journey to unravel the mysteries of indecision. Yes, you heard it right. We're diving deep into the topic of what to do when you don't know what to do. We'll explore practical strategies, insightful perspectives, and actionable steps to help you break free from the shackles of indecision and stride confidently towards your goals. Whether you're facing a personal or professional dilemma, or simply feeling lost in life, this episode is tailor-made to provide you with the guidance and clarity you seek. So buckle up, because we're about to uncover the next steps you need to take to navigate through uncertainty.
So it was kind of like a blind side, like an unknown blind side, which sounds really strange. This is a few months ago. I had an opportunity, a deal come across my plate, and it was something that was newer to me, and I wasn't sure what to do with it. Like, I was excited because it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be lucrative, and also just the progress. It was one of those things like, if this goes well, I can do a lot more of this. So I'm super excited, and so I do, the usual things of kind of planning it out, and then I got to this point where I didn't know. I'm like, I haven't done this before, so what do I do here? I'm stuck. And so I kind of put it to the side. I didn't pursue forward. It was kind of complex. And so I think my brain got tired. I'm like, I'll get to that later so I can think about it. And then it was probably a few days later, it popped back up and I was like, oh yes, I need to get that done. Didn't do it. I just said to myself, I need to get it done. And so I remember it was about, maybe 2-3 weeks had gone by, and it started to make me a little panicky because I'm like, time is running out. This is a hot deal and I don't want to lose the momentum. I don't want to lose the steam. And I sat and thought about it. I was like, why am I doing this? Like, first off, I was like, what? Well, I don't like this feeling. I was observing the feeling. And I'm like, how do I make this feeling go away? This emotional state. And that led to more questions, right? It led to, I don't know what to do. I'm not sure which direction to turn. I don't know who to ask. Because if I thought to myself, well, if I ask that person, nope, I know they don't know. And then I thought, well, if I ask this person, I know they don't know. So that kind of left me with nobody knows what to do. So I really didn't know what to do. And as you're listening to this story, like, maybe think to yourself as well, like, when was a time you didn't know what to do? Like, there was just a lot of steps, something you hadn't done before, not sure what direction to turn. So I remember, if I was to really think about how I ended up getting the ball rolling, was to pause and reflect. And this is very interesting. What did I really do by pausing and reflecting? Because you're listening to this right now. You're like, oh yeah, pause and reflect. That's much easier said than done. Because when you're rolling and you're going and you have a lot of things on your plate, you got a lot of good things going, stopping is almost painful. To stop and reflect, to go slow, to go fast, because you have to do even more mental work, right? And if I break it down, that's exactly what I did. Like, I ended up having nothing else was working. I was chipping, I was throwing little darts, like, and nothing was landing, and thinking that was going to get it done. I'll just throw this little dart and then I can go, then I'll be good to go. And none of that was working. So I was like, okay, I'm really going to have to just stop and really think what needs to happen next. And my next step was, I went to go ask one of the people that I thought wouldn't know the answer. And he didn't know the answer, but he was able to help me get clear on what the next move was. And he actually took some steps that helped me get the deal done.
Wow.
So just think about that, and of course this is very specific to me, but this shows up everywhere. If I speak to, I love to ask questions, as you know, and as I ask, like, you can always find out something someone hasn't done and why have they not done it. And it usually revolves around about not knowing what to do and not taking the time to figure out what the best step would be. And it's getting out of your own prison by doing that, right? Because it's like I said earlier, it's an emotional state that doesn't feel good. And yet that you drag that along with you until it's resolved. And then distraction kicks in. Okay, this doesn't feel good. I'm going to do something else. Do you resonate with that, Sean?
Yeah, man, I do. And one of the when I'm hearing you share that story, one of the things that pops in my mind is like when I don't know what to do, when I have my why and I have my emotional compelling nature behind it, and I know I get up every single morning and I have the energy, the vitality to do that and strive towards that goal. But when I don't know what to do, that drives me insane. That pulls my peace.
Yeah.
That pulls my bliss. That pulls my joy.
Emotional
And that's
state.
what I heard. Yeah, that's what I heard you saying in your story. It's like you're constantly thinking, your motor's going and you're spinning every single day thinking, I don't know what to do in this situation. And so I think it leads to our second point, which is seek guidance. And that's what you did. You went and sought guidance from an individual. So doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
Right. When you don't know what to do. And so
it's sneaky. I think it's sneaky too, because a lot of times we're like, well, I know what I would do in this situation. Well, that's a situation that you would know what to do in. Right. And we all have that. Like if you, because I'll hear people say, oh, I'm struggling with this. I'm like, oh, I know what to do with that. Well, then that's not a thing I'm not faced with not knowing what to do in that situation. You know? So this always shows up for people. And when you genuinely don't know what to do, you genuinely don't know what to do. And so I think this sequence that we're going to discuss today is going to be super powerful, because what is the result? What is the outcome when you do get unstuck, when you do know what to do? I mean, you get to go where as you want to go so much faster, and you're not taking all that negative emotions with you day after day. So seeking guidance, that really got me out of the pinch. That would end up being the linchpin.
I'm curious, you and your thoughts on, because I've tried to help coaches and even people in my life where they've tried to do multiple things with their health, lose weight, or eat healthier, and they find themselves going back to the same habits, right? So they've paused, they've reflected, they seeked guidance, but it seems like it's a never-ending story. So they continue that. It's not just a one and done, right? Where they keep moving the needle. They've literally put that on repeat. Paused and reflect, seek guidance. Got the guidance, right? And then the guidance didn't work. Pause and reflect, seek guidance. So I'm curious your thoughts on that with those individuals, because I have a few thoughts, and my first thought is you don't give up, right? Because you have your emotional compelling nature, you have your why, you have your purpose, you have your vision, because it's like what we shared on the last episode, the little guy digging for gold, right? The one that's digging for gold, he's digging for gold, he's digging for gold. And then you got the guy below in the picture that gives up, right? 6 months in. And then the other guy that's still digging for gold, and 12 months in, boom, he finds out his answer, right? By consistently having the resilience, the mental fortitude. And so I'm just curious your thoughts. You want to share a little your thoughts on that?
Man, one thing I've been focusing on here recently, and with you saying that, is I find it works well, especially with like coaches, and is to know that there's a good chance you are going to slide back to what you were doing before, because that's human nature. You go up, and then you have to come down at some point. You can't just continuously go up. You're going to hit plateaus. You're going to take backward steps, and that can derail people when that happens, because they just thought, "Oh, I'm good forever. I got the answer. I'm good. I'm on the outward path." And before they know it, they find themselves stuck, and they don't have a game plan for that, right?
Right.
If they know up front, hey, this is a good chance that this is going to happen. I'm gonna do well, and let's game plan it out, break it down. If I slide back, well, I expected it. That's going to be good. And here's my game plan. And I think that a lot of the times that just being aware that, most of the time things don't go to plan, as we well know. And then having some kind of game plan. I think just having the assurance, like when the negative thing happens, or you slide backwards, you're like, I knew it was coming. At least you have certainty there, and that gives you confidence, and you know what to do next. I think for me, and I say people, you would want to prepare for that, because people in general, everyone has a temperature, a thermostat that they are most comfortable with, and they will slide back down to that. Here's the thing: as you continue to improve and be consistent, like you were just saying, thermostat it rises. I remember when I went keto, which is all fat diet, right? It was 80% diet, and when I go to it was a Mexican restaurant, I remember I could eat a whole bowl or 2 bowls of chips. And when I was keto, you couldn't do that, right? So I remember I had trained myself to see chips like hay, like a horse would eat hay. And I'm like, so that's not edible for me. And it was a game I played with myself. So I ended up not being keto after a while because it was hard to maintain. It was one of those things I just didn't want to do. But you know what? I raised my base level on eating carbs. Like I had total control. I still eat carbs, but it's so much easier for me I eat so much less than I used to because I raised my thermostat on what carbohydrates can do to me. And this is if I'm not training, of course. Like training, you're eating carbs to fuel your engine. But if you're not, and you eat like excess carbs, you're just going to get in bad shape fast. But yeah, I think as you have that game plan, you know what is good. You learn from that. You slide back, but you don't slide back as far as you originally were. And then you continue to rise again. You'll slide back, but now you're higher than you were before. And that to me seems to happen over. Did you see that with your coachees?
Yeah, because you're raising the baseline. You're becoming the best version of yourself. And when you're raising that baseline, right, it's like what comes up must come down. And so you're going to be facing new challenges, new problems, new obstacles. And it's like the old saying, more money, more problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like, I remember a story like 16 months ago, when we started the Mastermind group, one of the questions I had in the group was like, or I told you multiple times, I was like, I want to impact, I want to serve more people. And so for me, I had always stuck to Facebook because that's what I'd built the back on of the insurance company, just organically, just a day trading attention, right? And so I didn't really go outside of Google My Business and Facebook, didn't really have a presence on Instagram, podcast. I didn't even barely listen to podcasts, YouTube, wasn't even thinking about it. And so I remember you saying, dude, you need to get on podcast. When I heard podcast, I remember thinking in my mind, that's scary. I'm not a podcaster. I don't know what I'm doing there. I don't even know how to start a podcast. Like what equipment do I need? Where do I go? Who do I?
You were stuck.
I was stuck. Right. And so I didn't know what to do. And the way my brain works is I always have to be moving forward. Meaning like, I don't care if I have to move forward to move backwards. And what I mean by that is, even if it's a setback or a stepping stone or a failure, or I look like a complete idiot, it doesn't matter to me. And here's why. It's because I'm not focused on the outcome and the failure or the obstacle or the setback. I'm focused on the macro, the vision, the serving and the impacting. That's what kept me going. That's what kept me searching for answers and seeking guidance. Right?
Most people will stop at I don't want to look bad though. Like you're moving forward, even if that means moving backwards, which means looking bad. And so they won't take the forward step to go back to then go forward.
Yes.
Right. But you do that regularly. It's kind of like we just discussed on the Tuesday episode for the High Rocks breakdown. The macro was 60 minutes. And I knew I was going to have to look bad in order to even play the game. I know this is not going to be pretty. You were looking great. I was suffering through, but I wanted that goal, the macro. Like if there was no goal behind it, if it was just like, I'd be like, this is miserable. There's no purpose. There's no purpose behind it.
Yep. Yeah, man. And so when you share that, it's like and for you, it's like when you don't know what to do, is you leaned in, you showed initiative, you put one foot in front of the other, and it was almost like that. I call it the applied suffering, right? And so it's in those moments where, kind of like the story you shared with on 2 episodes ago on the being a song leader, right?
Oh, yep.
Plugging yourself in, being in that environment. And then I went deeper and I said, well, Sean, what would you do in that environment? Well, I would execute, right? And so I think that's just goes a long ways when you have that mentality, that internal belief. When you don't know what to do, like the external forces you can't control what the external forces are, what people are thinking, the likes that you get when you roll out a reel or a Facebook video or a podcast, if you get 1 download or 0 downloads, right? You can't control that. Those are external forces. But what you can control is, how am I feeling? What's my emotions right now? What's my thoughts? What am I feeling? Well, I'm lack of confidence, lack of self-belief. Well, why? Because of the lack of downloads, the lack of likes, the lack of shares. Nobody's reaching out to me. And so what should I focus on? That, or should I focus on, okay, hey, you know what? The way you're showing up right now, let's make a tweak. Let's make an adjustment. Let's evolve. Let's trade our energy, time, and effort on that, on what we can do versus what we can't do. Mm-hmm. And that creates that momentum and that confidence when you get to those places of stuck, lost, right? And you don't know what to do because you're slowing down to go fast.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm hearing you say you're breaking it down, you're exploring the options, and you're experimenting and learning. If you said those three things to people, hey, break it down, explore the options, and experiment and learn, people are like, oh yeah, great. I'll do that. It's a great idea. I can do that, or I already do that. But then it comes to reality, because it's great saying those words, but when it comes to it, people don't do that. But what you just said, you did. Like you do that every time. Like, and especially you're held to the fire when it's like, let's say social media, because it's visible. I heard something the other day, man, and it really hit me hard. I think it was Alex Hormozi said it. He was like, people are not afraid of failure. They're afraid of people seeing them fail. It's the people seeing them fail.
That's worth repeating.
Yeah. I've said it over and over in my head. I'm like, that is the truth. Because if no one was on the planet, right? No one was around, and you were going to do something and you were going to fail at it, you wouldn't care. No one is there to see you. If you go in a room right now and go practice something or go do something you're horrible at, let's say singing, you could go belt it out. Okay, now go into the street, go outside your door, or go ring your neighbor's doorbell and just start singing. Absolute panic stations. What changed? Still, the sounds are coming out your mouth like you were in the room on your own, but someone's observing you, right? And so that petrifies people. And so that'll have people get stuck right away. Like that's their immediate stuck, and they might never move out of that mode. But if you want your result, that macro, you're really gonna have to face that. Like, okay, right. What do I need to do? Break it down, like you're saying, explore the options and experiment, and think of it as an experiment and learning, as opposed to do or die, looking like a fool, failing. If you think about experimenting and learning, because you say that all the time, fail forward, right? I think that is the mindset.
What do you think allows people to continue to show up, have the resilience to do it month after month after month, versus individuals that are experiencing more of feeling stuck and not knowing what to do, versus the one that's keep moving forward? Because we all have the same amount of time during the day. We're all human beings. We put our pants on the same way. But what do you think separates the difference between those that do and those that don't moving forward?
I think that lines up perfectly with our next point. I was just saying, people aren't afraid of failure. They're afraid of people seeing them fail. But are people seeing them fail, or are they just thinking about people seeing them fail? Which is what? It's in their mind. And so whose thoughts are they having? The other people's that are seeing them, or their own projection of those? It's their own thoughts. They're treating themselves like that, which is sadistic. It's masochistic. You're hurting yourself when you think those terms. Those people aren't thinking that. They don't even know your thoughts, and you don't actually even know how they might think. They might hear you sing and be like, "That's great job. Thank you for coming to my door. I was having a terrible day. Thanks for coming, ringing on the door and singing to me. That was awesome. Can you come back?" But you thought, "I would never do that. It'd be so embarrassing. It'd be petrifying." That's how people think. And so what would you have to do the opposite of then, right? Like, well, if you're thinking negatively, that's self-projection, self-compassion, right? When you give yourself grace, that self-compassion, which is our next point, when you can do that with yourself, man, you're a lot stronger person. And that allows you to take more action. And as you take more action, you get better at stuff. And when you're afraid, typically being afraid is just a lack of reps, because you're not confident. When you do something over and 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 over again, you get confident at it, right? You just get good. It's the norm. It's the new normal. And so when you have self-compassion, you allow yourself to take more action, and more action leads to confidence. And then you just leveled up.
Man, I used to be so hard on myself, and I used to be the worst at self-compassion, at grace, and giving myself love and really talking to myself kindly. I used to be the worst at it, man. I was so hard.
What would you say to yourself?
Man, it was more of like, you can do better than that. You didn't give it at all. I always had the natural talent in baseball. I always thought I was the guy because, there would be guys beside me that could just show up, crush it. They could go out the night before, show up, crush it, go 4 for 4. And I was like, I can be that guy. Right. And so when I couldn't be that guy, I'm like, well, they're better than me. Right. It was almost an envy. And so how can they do it and I can't? And so I just never give myself self-love. I never give myself compassion. I'm like, I'm a different human being. Right. I'm a different individual. And I can't control what they can do. I can only control what I can do. And maybe they are doing something different behind the scenes that I'm not doing. Right. And so, but I was focusing all my time, energy, and effort on what they were doing and how they were showing up versus what I was doing. And that's when I needed the grace, the compassion, and versus what I'm not experiencing, what I'm not capable of, or what I wasn't capable of doing.
I'm curious, did you said the words, I'm not as good as them, or I'm not good enough. Would you ever say to yourself, you idiot, like you dummy, like, would you ever call yourself those names? Or
I never did any of that kind of talking to myself.
Wow.
But what I did do is I had an unrealized talent, Ewan, and I never tapped into it. I never tapped into it because I never did the work behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
The dark work, as Anthony Trucks, in the line of work that he does. And I resonate so much with that because I never did that. I was never taught that, right? I was too focused on what society was saying, what society was doing, what the people around me, my teammates, and not what I was thinking, how I was showing up, my momentum, my confidence, my belief, my compassion, my self-love for myself. I never had that within. It was all external forces. And so,
do you know something interesting hearing you said, dude? Like, I was very curious because you had no hint of you calling yourself like a name, but you would just, it was more of a being and comparing yourself to how you were. But for me, I'm almost not the opposite of, but I would do it like, I never looked at other people and thought they were better than me, ever. I always thought to myself, I am the best. And if they're beating me right now, it's just because I have not done the work. But I would tell myself all the time, you idiot, you're not smart, you're dumb.
Really?
So I would talk negative. Yeah. So it was about my smarts, like my physical capabilities. I knew that with enough time, I could do anything physically. And I always had that confidence, but like mentally, like I would beat my character up. And that would make me afraid of failing or looking foolish. Put my hand up in class was not, I would get so red, so embarrassed, totally stuck in those terms, like couldn't get past that. So I was just curious, like, how did different people think? People think differently, and you think that way. And but you were kind to yourself. You didn't call yourself dumb or an idiot, which is, that sounds nice,
Yeah, no, I guess I have gratitude and gratefulness that I didn't talk to myself like that, and I couldn't, because if I did, then I don't think I would have did some of the things that I haven't done in life, as far as baseball and stuff like scholarship. I was always. I was very big on, I didn't concentrate my efforts, my energy on self-doubt or the negative talk, like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It was almost like a facade. It was almost like all my energy and all my confidence was built on what people thought of me and how they saw me. So if people were praising me, if people were clapping for me, if I was the go-to man, if I was the guy in the cleanup, if I was starting, then that was my self-worth, right? And so it's a disease. It's a problem, because then you're at how you show up, your vitality, your bliss, your joy, your happiness is external forces. It's surface level, right? And so it was almost like I was trying to be the Superman. I was trying to be facade for everybody else around me. And so the problem with that is, it's not, when times get tough, right? And you get older and you get in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, you start building a business, and then you start receiving these different messages from your spouse or from your employees or from your team members, your community. And because you become this public figure, well, then how I'm showing up is based on their external force, and how, my feelings and emotions is based on what they're thinking of me. And that is not a quality of life.
Yeah.
And so for me, when you do the dark work, when you do the behind the scenes, when you put in the time, energy, and effort, you slow down, you have these pauses, you seek guidance, everything that we've talked about, then you can go within. Then you can start looking at, what are my beliefs? What are my vision? What is my purpose? Like, what is my vision? You start asking yourself the question. You may have to ask yourself the question for 6 or 7 months, but at least you're slowing down to go fast and taking the time, energy, and effort, spending the time on that. Because when you build that, when you get stuck and you don't know what to do, right? The only thing there is to do is align it with your vision, your macro, the why, your core values, because the decisions become easier and easier and easier because they're aligned with who you are, your identity. And then you take action, right? Which is kind of like our final step. You take action. And is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. I'm an imperfect human being, just like anybody listening to this. But when you align that with, now I'm concentrating on everything within my values, my beliefs, and my vision, you become this unstoppable force, and you don't care you don't care what other people necessarily thinking about you. If you get those likes or the reels or the shares, or if you get the downloads on podcasts, if people come up to me, I don't care. All it is to me is, I just need to show up the best version of myself, work on these different things that are aligned with my values, and the right people will come. And that's what I've been doing for the last 18, 20, 24 months, which will create momentum and confidence, is like what we're talking about, to take more action, massive action.
That's a belief. Like when you believe it, you don't really care what other people believe. And that's attractive, right? Because a lot of people don't have those visions. They don't have the belief. And so they're kind of wishy-washy. They might either be a hater or criticize, or they're going to follow you and want to be part of it, and that's what helps you push through it. And it's so funny to hear, like, it's exactly the same for me, but it was like I said, on the intelligence side. Like, it wasn't on the physical. I didn't want that the people were watching you not perform physically. For me, I was like, I was afraid of people watching me and looking dumb. Like, it was an intellectual. I was afraid of the intellect. Like, on the physical side, it didn't really hit me like that, but it was the same thing, same process. I had to get to a point where, man, it's not about what they think about my intelligence. That's ludicrous. Those are my own thoughts swirling around. Once again, it's not actually true. So doing the dark work, like Anthony Truck says, and really not caring what people think, in one of the easiest ways, or maybe the only way, was what you just said: belief, having the vision. Like, I know what I'm about, and I'm not worried about what people would think about that. It took a long time to work on that, So, anybody listening to this, if you're still in that boat and working on it, of course, there's always a thing. I'm always having that conversation, because things will always try and blindside you. So it's not like I have that handled, but I know how to handle it when it rises up. Like, it still shows up.
Do you find it when you had the negative self-talk dummy? You would fool, whatever you would call it, whatever you would say internally. Do you find that showing up today? And if so, how do you overcome that?
No, I really don't, because I'm hyper aware. Like, however you talk to yourself, like what the words you say to yourself, even if you'd say, I don't believe I'm an idiot, but there's certain parts of the brain that just heard you say you are an idiot, right? Yeah. So you can't, it will absorb that. And is there any way that's going to be positive for you in any way, shape, or form? No, there's no version of you saying those words that is good for you. Like, the brain's not going to think it's the positive thing. And so, you have to be very careful with what you say and what you think, because it's a slippery slope. Yeah. So for me, I make sure I don't. And if I do catch myself like kind of thinking those ways, I really kind of break it down, especially with my kids when I'm playing with them. I'll say, man, that was a terrible throw. No, I'm like, no, I didn't quite have the technique right when I threw that. I need to do this. So it's that kind of change the way and that leads back to I guess the intelligence part. Like in the past, I thought I was dumb. I had dyslexia growing up, ADHD, and couldn't do tests or whatever without having to work 10 times harder. So I'm like, man, you're just not smart. That's what I thought. And so something didn't go my way, but like, yeah, you're an idiot, and so that would negatively impact me. So yeah, I've spent a lot of time working on that, and it's made a big difference, not thinking those ways. But what about you? Like, I mean, you kind of spoke to it, but you don't think that anymore, right? Like,
yeah, for me, it's man, I tell you what, when you go slow to go fast, and you spend the time in doing the work on yourself, the simple exercises. I'd recently talked to you about a core value exercise. I had done multiple core value exercises. And so when you hear core value exercises, you're like, cheesy. There's several assessments and all these other things. Like, you're going to push that off to the side. At least that's kind of what I did. I've just heard about purpose and why and core values. And I was like, I don't need to do that, and for whatever reason, I never did it, right? Up until a few years ago. But when and now thinking back and talking about it on the podcast now, I think the reason I didn't do it, Ewan, is because I was like, I don't need to do this. I'm fine the way I am right now. It was a lie. It was a lie I'm telling myself, right? Because I was just in the rat race. I was doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results, right? Whereas it was just, I wasn't improving. I wasn't making progress. And us as human beings, we want to see that progress. We want to see that baseline move. At least if you're listening to this, right? Level up and live. You're wanting to become the best version of yourself. And it wasn't until I slowed down. I said, you know what? I'm going to put my phone on do not disturb. I'm going to tell my wife. I'm going to tell all my friends and family. I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to wipe my calendar for 3 hours, take a pen and paper, go to online and search free assessments on a DISC profile, on a core values, and PDF it, and then just do the work and see what the outcomes are going to be, right? I've never done it before. It's uncertain. But man, let me tell you something. When I slowed down enough to do that, my life has never been the same. It's only been for the better. And I've just been able to impact more lives because I see the progress in working on the importance of these core value exercises. It's like what I was so excited to share it with you recently. I said, man, I've done multiple core exercises, but I'm going to send it to you. And I emailed it to you. I don't have to check your email box, but me and Kendra did it on Sunday. And I told Kendra, I was like, babe, here are my core values. I know I've done them before, but they've kind of tweaked, because it's been a few years. And, visions, whys, our purpose, they change. They change every 2-3 years. And I haven't done it in a couple of years. And so I was excited to share it with her. And you know what she did? My wife goes, well, let me take it real quick. I didn't even ask her to do it, right?
Oh, I love it.
That's the impact of the people. That's your family, right? You're the role model. You're the leader within the household. So because I did it, I shared it with her. She took the assessment. And lo and behold, her values were perfectly lined up. And it just was so clear as day on why some of the decisions that she was making on a daily basis, why she does DECA, why she does teaching. And she's not focused on the money. She's focused on this because it's aligned with her values. And that's why she's so happy-go-lucky. That's why she's just a simple woman, right? And she shows up the best version of herself every single day is because she's slowed down, took the hour out of her Sunday, right? Which would have been easy to go do the Netflix, did the assessment. We both did it together. And now we both have our core values and we're aligning it with decisions, whether we buy a house or a job or investments, whatever it may be. Is it aligned with our values? And if it's not, it makes the decisions easy. And more importantly, when you're stuck, when you don't know what to do, your values will guide you. Your vision will guide you. And that if you haven't listened to anything on this 30 plus minutes, you got to slow down to do these little bitty simple steps because then
I was going to say we should have started with that because I was just thinking to myself, man, if you're stuck, go find out what your core values are. It's funny. If it had been a year ago or 2 years ago, or man, even 6 months ago, I don't know. You'd sent that link for the values thing. I'd be like, that's probably not going to get opened.
Yeah.
No, it's top of my priority list to go through it because I've found some of my core values and I'm looking for more. And they're not easy to find sometimes.
Nope.
Right. And I think if you listening to this now, if you're listening to this, if I asked you right now, hey, what's your core values, or give me one, if you have to pause and think about it, or like say, I don't know, man, that's an indicator. That is a surefire indicator that that you need to go get that, and you will see things shift in your life.
It's like Dave Ramsey says, and I always said this all the time. Kendra probably got sick of it when we first started dating 13 years ago. I'd always say, live like nobody else now, so you can live like nobody else later. So if you're listening to this, you're like, you know what? Sounds good, guys. Right? There's going to be a million things that's going to stop you. Right? You're probably going to stop listening to this podcast. You're going to jump on the phone. You're going to send an email. You're going to take care of your kid. You're going to go to the gym, and you're going to push this to the side. Right? But if you live like nobody else now, so you can live like nobody else later, and you're in your teens, think about if we did this in our teens or 20s. If you're listening to this in your 30s or 40s or 50s, you're like, yeah, if I would have done this in my teens or 20s, right? I'm 37, you're 42. Man, talk about a blueprint, understanding your values and your core values. It helps with who you're going to bring in on as a wife or a husband, kids, what your beliefs are, what your, the job that you work, the career that you're going to be doing, the yeses and the nos that you're going to be saying on you got 7 days during the week. What does your yeses look like? What does your nos look like? And it makes, even though you're putting in the work right now, and it seems very hard and challenging and uncertain because we weren't taught this in school, core values, right? But because you're putting in the work right now, it will get easier. Live like nobody else now, so you can live like nobody else later, right? Whether it's finances, doing these core values. Dave Ramsey preaches all the time. I listen to Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey has these 7 baby steps, right? For folks that struggle with budget. But if you do these steps, which most people don't want to do, budget, I don't want to have a budget. But if you do it and it works, right? You're living like nobody else now, so you can live like nobody else later. You can buy the things you want to later, but most don't. We don't, right? And then we regret it when we get in our 30s, 40s, 50s. We're like, should have listened to that Level Up and Live podcast or Dave Ramsey or one of those guys. And we're never going to say we told you so. Right? We're just going to keep beating the message down.
I think once you find that thing too, you don't want to do that work because it seems unattractive, doesn't seem sexy, it seems boring, or you think, how is that going to help? Like, how is finding out this little thing going to change my life? The disconnect is large. I know that was what it was for me. But man, I tell you, once you find even just one, it's almost like a superpower. Because it's this thing you can you just have to have the bare minimum thought about that core value and what it is to be aligned with that. Yes. It is electric. Like you're like, it's immediate. It's an immediate like power up when you connect, because it's a core principle. It's a core value. It's like the decisions have been made already. Everything aligns and connects when you know that core value for whatever it is for you. And it is worth spending the time to find it. And if you do the work and it doesn't resonate, you haven't found your core value yet, so it's worth it to find it, because it will change the course, the literal direction, the choices you make in your life. It really does.
Yeah. And that's what allows you to come alive, because the choices that you're making right now they may be based on external forces, on what's going on around you, what your boss is saying, what your team members are saying, your kids, your spouse. You're so focused on external forces and what everybody else is saying versus your own internal values, because you're going along with what everybody else is saying, the news, social media, what to do, what not to do. Well, what about you, right? What about your internal beliefs, your values? Yeah. What decisions you making? You making it based on your spouse, your kids, everybody else? No, right? And so I think it's the key ingredient, right? To really allow you to focus within and then impact those around you. Because how many conversations do you think are going on out there with families about core values, vision, and mission and purpose? It's not happening, right? But the great companies do it. The great families do it, right? So why not reciprocate, or not replicate that and follow that blueprint? Because like you said, we don't want to go slow to go fast. We don't want to slow down because it's not sexy. It's not, life's busy. I don't have time, whatever the justification was. But again, like I said earlier, and I'll keep beating this message down because I believe it to the core. If you live like nobody else now, you can live like nobody else later. And it's such a beautiful statement, right? And so think about it with you, Ewan, like at Lockie and your kids, and Henley talking about the core values. Sure, maybe they're too young. Maybe they are. I don't know, right? I don't have kids.
No, I think it's time. I mean, they can definitely understand it. And even whatever level they'll understand it at, they'll know it's important because kids have values too. They know what right and wrong is, so for them to have that at such a young age, I mean, that's going to be a huge tool, something to lean on when their inexperience, their immaturity kicks in. They'll have that core value, and so I haven't done that yet because I think you just sent it last night. I saw it this morning. So tonight I'm putting a date time on there. I'm going through it with the kids and my wife tonight. Looking forward to it too. I can't wait.
I think one of the beautiful things about doing that at a young age and talking about the core values, because it's not just going to happen once, right? You'll want to consistently have those conversations with them. But I'm thinking about like myself when I was 11 or 12, maybe I understood it, maybe I didn't. But as I get older, because how you do one thing is how you do everything. So you have these conversations over and over and over again. When they turn 18, 19, 20, and they start making decisions about boyfriends, going out on dates, houses, traveling, making these hard decisions, doing hard things. If they have their values, think about how much easier those decisions will be. Hey, for you as a parent, right?
Yeah.
Is that aligned with your values? Because your kid's going to come to you and say, hey, I don't know, Dad. I don't know what to do in this situation. You're going to give them the best guidance that you can. And ultimately, you're going to let them make the decision, right? You're not going to tell them what to do. But if you can go back to the conversation of, well, hey, what's your values? Well, Dad, I haven't looked at my values in a while. Okay, well, maybe it's time to spend the time, energy, and effort on that versus should I buy a house? Should I buy a car? Should I get a mortgage? Should I get a car note? Because if you're saying yes to these and your number one core value is freedom, that's not freedom. That's not aligned with your core values. So then you're doing it because of external forces, because of what your friends and family think about you, because you got to drive this brand new car and have this car note.
Dude, you're dropping nuggets, gold nuggets right here, dude, because I just realized you saying that. I don't know what my kids' core values are. Like, it's super important for them, but for me to know, the conversations that we would have in certain circumstances that I'm thinking about would go completely different. Instead of me saying, well, this is why, blah, 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 blah. We're going to totally shift that over and be like, hey, remember when we talked about what was important to you? Can you think about that lined up with this? And can you justify to yourself that this makes sense? How does it feel? Because it's a feeling, right? Is it not a feeling when you think about when it's aligned and not aligned? You feel it.
That's right.
Because we're human beings. We're emotional. We feel things. And when they will be able to determine, that doesn't align with that thing that I'm highly connected with, here's my decision. And it'll be their decision, not mine. Because if I'm making decisions for them, see you, that's dictatorship. And I'm not going to be that kind of dad, So dude, I'm very excited. I'm very intrigued. Even more than I thought I would be. Very excited.
A wise man once told me, I mean, kind of for the sake of time, we can wrap things up. But a wise man once told me that the quality of your life will be based on your emotions and your thoughts, right? What is your emotions? Is it negative? Is it self-taught or self-doubt? Is it worried about what other people are thinking you, judgment, envy? Your quality of thoughts and your emotions will be the quality of your life, right? So take that with a grain of salt. And when you know yourself, when one knows their self, authentic, true self, what allows them to come alive. And how do you know yourself, Sean? Well, you have to do the dark work. You have to do this stuff that we're talking about, because remember, what you do now, right? You'll either think your future self or you won't think your future self. And so I talk to so many people and they look back and they go, man, I wish I would have done that when I was in my teens or in my 20s, right? And so I think doing the work, slowing down, going through these bullet points and going back, listening to this episode again, right? Taking notes and taking action, that's a good starting place.
It's never too late to do this. Never too late to do it either.
Yeah.
Like you might think, oh, I'm not 20 anymore. Even if you're 60, 70, this is appropriate today for everybody. 100%, man. That's a beautiful, beautiful phrase, man, because emotional state. How do you feel, man? I want to enjoy my life. You don't have to suffer. It can be another way. So, man, I appreciate you saying that, man, because that rings true for me big time.
Yeah. And just kind of the final note on this one is, at the same time, it's like a lot of us consider ourselves perfectionists. I know my wife and she'd be okay with me saying this because she even says it herself. She's a perfectionist, right? Her creativity, she likes things to be perfect, and me to a certain degree as well, like whether it's my garage or whether it's my house or whether it's my truck or whatever it may be, right? And so I have to constantly focus on myself to be intentional and make it a priority to be flexible. So there's been times where I found myself stuck or not knowing what to do. I have to be flexible because I'm not going to have the exact answer on, hey, Sean, here's the blueprint. You need to do this, right? And this is the outcome you're going to get. So be flexible. That's kind of the final note that I want to share is be flexible in this journey, in this process of moving the needle and doing these things, hard things, right? That nobody is going to do. And I know if you're listening to this, you're different. You're wanting to level up and live. So just follow these ingredients, these tips, these tactical actions. And man, I guarantee you in 6 months, 12 months, 18, 24 months, you're going to come back and go, I am so grateful that I took action. It was hard. It was not easy, but I went slow to go fast. I lived, Sean, and Ewan, I lived like nobody else then, so I could live like nobody else now. And if you just let these words ring in your ear for the next 6 to 12 to 24 months, and you put your head down and you go to work on yourself harder, you're going to come out and people are going to be like, who are you? Who are you? Like, where is this? You have become the best version of yourself. You are
unstuck.
Yeah. Give me some of that, right? You are unstuck. You show up differently. Your presence, there's something about you. And so it's not about what you say. It's about what you do. It's the action steps that you take moving forward. So that's all I got.
And on that note, man, level up and live, brother.
Level up and live, brother. And there you have it. Another empowering episode of the Level Up and Live podcast in the book. We hope you found today's insights valuable and actionable. Remember, the journey to self-discovery and growth is ongoing, and we're here to guide you every step of the way. Now, before you go, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode filled with transformational wisdom. Also, we'd love to hear from you. Leave us a review sharing what you liked about today's episode and how it resonated with you. Your feedback fuels our passion to continue delivering content that uplifts and inspires. Lastly, don't keep this treasure chest of knowledge to yourself. Share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or anyone you know who could benefit from our discussion navigating uncertainty. Together, let's empower each other to level up and live our best lives. Until next time, keep leveling up, keep living, and remember, the path to greatness begins with a single step. This is Sean Myers signing off.